a lady over 100 years old on her birthday. That's what she wanted for her birthday. And we gave her a ride, you know, and she was a Spitfire, apparently. I wasn't there, but she was a Spitfire. Like I said, we couldn't do it without volunteers. There were 21 active volunteers, but there were actually 42 of them that at one point or another gave their time to the program. Seaway Valley Health Center were the ones that developed the program to train the volunteers. We call them pilots, screen them, provided guidelines. As you know, COVID screening was just, you know, so worked on that. And then it was partnered with Centre de Santé. Both organizations then provided the training, both hands-on as well as on Zoom. So they had both. Not only did volunteers help with this program, so did a lot of the partnerships we created. And these are just some. Both health centers, the Rotary, City of Cornwall departments, the Park and Rec, Finance, Bylaw, Communication Coordinator, Tourism Coordinator, Marina 200, the staff there. There was many people. At one point I tried to count how many people actually touched or the program. I stopped counting. I just stopped counting. So people got involved and people for some reason got the bug to make this program work, and it did. So some of you will ask, well, what's up now? What are you doing about it now? Because we're just a committee of council, right? So just happily to report that with partnering up with City, with the remaining monies from a grant that we had received, we are purchasing 2 new Trishas. They're a different style. We've learned with the one we used last year, and we've taken all the good things and the recommendations we were given, and we went out and apparently the delivery will be early spring. So the program will be going. And as a matter of transparency, I do want to say that we've put in a request through Mr. Golden's budget. I'm not quite sure. You probably are going to go through that soon. You will find our request in there. It's basically for operation of the program, for summer student to run the program on behalf of the committee. The committee continues to apply for funds. This summer we put in an application for New Horizons. New Horizons is opening up a new set of requests or opening up requests for proposals coming up very soon. And the committee is intending on reviewing that and seeing what we are going to be, how and what we are going to be applying for. We're always looking to bring in ideas and to try to fund it through grants. Currently, our committee and a subgroup of our committee is actually going a meeting on a regular basis and starting what we call a community campaign. We're going out there to get support from organizations, small or big, in kind. We're going to start making presentations. We are meeting on Friday to get sort of our timeline, and we're going out to the community. So some of you that are part of some organization, we might be knocking on your door. We also we have maintained and we are maintaining our presence on the City of Cornwall website. So that's another way that we want to sustain the program. When people are hearing about it, they have a place to go. We also have information. We still have information handouts that we hand out to people that are asking for some information, where to access that information. The committee itself, in terms of work ahead, that's just one program. Seniors on Wheels program was just one program. We we certainly want to do more. And so there's a subgroup right now of the committee that is working on taking the implementation plan and the logic matrix that we created and start re-looking at the priorities, re-looking at timelines. COVID put the committee back about 2 years, and so we want to start realigning some of our priorities. Some of the priorities, preliminary, I may say, are we want to work with administration to sort of develop a common coordination seniors affair where someone can go and say, I've got something for seniors, who do I talk to? So we want to create that sort of relationship and sort of that kind of idea we're throwing around. We'd like to resurvey the community. It's been 5 years already. Things have changed, big time has changed. And so we'd like to embark on another survey. We want to look, and as we're approaching organizations for a Seniors on Wheels program, we also want to approach senior organizations on what their priorities are. We know that the pickleball phenomena out there is running rampant. Jamie must be pulling his hair out because it is something out there. We also are hearing about these senior playgrounds. I don't like that term, but it's a model. We want to explore what that looks like for our community. So as a committee, we want to put some of those priorities intact. We're always looking for funding opportunities in order to move forward and to keep the committee viable, and as projects come that we can recommend to council, and so may make some good recommendations to council. And the work continues. One of the things that I forgot to show you is whenever that 100-year-old had her birthday bride, this is an example of a booklet that we started handing out to the seniors that did have a ride. It was their pass, and it went through everything from the overview of all the attractions they had seen through the park that our volunteers would talk about. It would talk about history, the museum, give more information about the program. They can take their notes. When we take their pictures, we had a Polaroid, take their pictures and slide it in, and it was a little souvenir for them. So it's amazing how many people went back to their homes or retirement homes or their families and said, you guess what I did over the weekend or on Friday or Saturday or Thursday. So this is the booklet that was handed out to them. Now I'll stop talking. I'm sure you'll have questions, and Bernard will answer the questions.
That's dangerous.
Thank you.
Thanks for the presentation, Norm. Questions? Councillor Gardner?
It's more of a comment to that 107-year-old woman. One of the things that she said was, as she was younger, she would go to the park and she'd be going from one end of the park to the other. And at the end of the day, when she finished her ride, she said, "My God, this park is so beautiful. I've seen things that I never saw before. Because I was going from one place to another." And that actually excited me because this lady really didn't buy into it. She just absolutely enjoyed it. The only other comment I have is the mayor and I and Elaine did the Christmas parade or the parade this weekend, and there was one, Trish Shaw, I guess it's from the Bicycle Club, that was going around with another, I'm sorry, Councillor Towndale was there too, just being seen. So I think next year it might be nice to have our cycle going around with that one to really advertise what we're doing and and possibly handing out some paperwork to say this is how you do it, because I know there were a lot of seniors out that night. So, but thank you very much, both of you, for the work that you really do. Both of you are, especially you, Mr. LaMarche, have been amazing. So, yeah, thank you.
Councillor Towndale?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Gentlemen, thank you for your presentation and update. It's a great initiative. I mean, you know, you mentioned that you got set back because of COVID, but I think you played catch up really quickly because you have such a tangible result with such an impact to seniors and residents in the community so quickly. It's fantastic. I think it's testament to yourself and your committee's work, dedication, and just like getting down and getting things done. So, you know, kudos to you for that. And I just want to thank you again. I had the privilege, as you know, this summer to take a ride myself, and it was fantastic. You know, it's not, in my opinion, it's great for all ages, and it's a great way to see the city. So, thank you.
Thank you.
Councillor McDonald?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So, pardon my back, but if I don't speak into the mic, you won't hear my question. So, I just wanted to, first of all, thank you and congratulate you on your successes, but thanks so much for what you do for the community. And I'm glad to hear you've got information brochures, and I was going to ask about one specifically, because I was on the Senior Friendly Committee at one point, you might remember, Norm, way back when, and we developed a brochure with, that highlighted the 5 seniors clubs that we have in the city. And every now and then I pass one of those brochure stands and I look for it, and I haven't seen it for a while, and I'm just wondering if it's still floating around. And
We still have them.
good.
We have stacks of them.
And are they out? Like, can you find it at the Benson Center and upstairs here at the? Okay, because I've looked in those places, not found it. So I guess I'm just there at the wrong time. Anyway, keep up the good work.
Councillor DePel?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, through you. Mr. Kenville, Mr. LaMarche, thank you very much for the update and for your dedication, as some of my colleagues have already mentioned. I know that we have a similar program to this one where I work, and it is truly moving for those people who are experiencing that ride. And as Mr. Kenville said, something as little as a drive through Lamoureux Park can be as big as life for someone. So thank you very much for all that you do.
You're welcome. Thank you.
Councillor McIntosh?
As a member of the senior caucus of this council, I want to thank you for taking an interest in us. I haven't ridden on one of the cycles yet. I'm going to save it for my 101st birthday. And anyway, it's a great, it's so interesting how something so simple can mean so much for so many people, as Morris alluded to. Anyway, I want to thank you, and I'm looking forward to that cycle trip.
We'll put your name down.
No one else? Well, thank you very much, and I want to give Bernard a chance to talk here, so it's... But I just want to thank Bernard, because he decided to be chair when nobody else wanted it, and he's done a magnificent job. He's kept the committee together, and so I just want to verify that you'll be back next year. So here's
Yes.
your opportunity to...
I'll be preparing for a ride for you, Mr. Mayor. I just wanted to, maybe if I could add just a comment to what's been said. This is not just Norm and I, this is a committee of concerned parties in the community that want to do better for our seniors. And we do have them, they're here in great numbers, and we want to do more. I mean, it's not just recreation, we're talking about housing, we're talking about a multi-level logic plan, because the needs are there. The needs are there, and they're begging to be addressed. So our group is, I'm happy to say that we've did well under this particular program, and I think it showed the cooperation that exists with the city, because I tell you, the city officials were wonderful people, resourceful people, that made things happen for us and for the community, made it so much a pleasure to come and donate the time. So I want to thank Tracy in particular, and a lot of the team effort that she had, and Emma. I'm going to lose the names, obviously, but it was a team effort. And it just reminds me that when we really focus on something important as their seniors, we can make it happen. You can make it happen through us. And I think that's the important piece. That's the link that we want to have, to continue to have from our committee. So thank you very much for hearing our presentation, and thank you for the comments and the approval. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Keep up the good work.
We have one consent item, Mr. Mayor, the third quarter financial results for 2021. With the recommendation that council receive this third quarter financial results for the period ending September 30th, 2021.
Motion, Councillor DePel, Councillor McDonald, all in favor? Opposed? Carried. Thank you.
We have no reports from unfinished business, but we do have the business listing, and we're looking for a motion to receive this listing.
Motion received, Councillor Gardner, second by Councillor Towndale. All in favor? Opposed? Carried.
Under communication, we have one item.
Oh, hold it. Okay, go ahead.
2021 Annual Report for the Municipal Grants Program with this following recommendations. That council receive report 2021-102 Financial Services as the 2021 Annual Report for the Municipal Grants Program. B, that council approve the recommended changes to the municipal grants policy attached as Appendix A. And C, that council approve the recommended changes to the municipal grants program guidelines attached as Appendix B.
Motion, Councillor Bennett, second by Councillor Hollingsworth. Discussion. All in favor? Opposed? Carried. Thank you.
New business motions. Pedestrian crosswalk on 2nd Street, proposed by Councillor Justin Towndale and seconded by Councillor Dean Hollingsworth. Now therefore be it resolved that administration be requested to prepare a report on the option of installing a signaled crosswalk on 2nd Street West in the vicinity of Riverdale Terrace and the prospect of including the costing in the 2022 budget.
Discussion? Councillor Towndale.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. As my colleagues will recognize, this stems from a petition that came to us a few years ago, I think now, but because of COVID and other factors, it was pushed forward a bit. We received a report a few months ago stating that it was felt that a crosswalk was not necessary, but we did not approve that recommendation. So it was left kind of in limbo, more or less. The preamble to the motion more or less covers what I would bring up here. We received a petition with 300 signatures, including several dozen residents of Riverdale Terrace and their families. Some local businesses in the area submitted letters of support. The former MP sent one, and one of the schools in that neighborhood did as well. I know that with COVID, traffic patterns have changed slightly. The nature of that neighborhood has changed slightly, and now the third phase of Riverdale Terrace is almost complete. So I think you're going to likely see an even greater need for this crosswalk in that area, I believe. So we've talked about this before. I'll save any future comments for my wrap-up prior to voting, but that's all I'd like to say at this time. Thank you.
Councillor Hollingsworth.
Thank you, Your Worship. I seconded the motion, much to which Councillor Towndale has already alluded to. I think the nature of that area with senior buildings being completed, I acknowledge that this is not going to be an easy task, as Mr. Fothrop and I kind of discussed it a little bit a couple weeks ago. There's a lot of things going on in that area, and I don't know if it's going to be nice and clean, but I kind of get a feeling it's necessary. So I don't know how admin's going to kind of put it together. I certainly appreciate they have a challenging and daunting task ahead of them, but I think just saying, well, we'll monitor it till later on, I don't think that will suffice in light of how the neighborhood is evolving fairly quickly. So I look forward, hopefully council will endorse the motion. I look forward to seeing what our admin team can try to put together. Thank you.
Councillor McIntosh?
When I was looking over the signatures on the petition, there was one signature I was looking for and I couldn't find it. And that was J.C. Goddard, who owns the building. He owns both buildings. Ms. Adams, have we had any discussions with Mr. Goddard? Has he approached us, or have we approached him? And any plans discussed, maybe?
Madam CAO?
So through you, Mr. Mayor, we did have a meeting with Mr. Goddard. So on October the 8th, Mr. Fothrop, Mr. DeWitt, and myself met with Mr. Goddard. We had a map out to discuss the project at Riverdale Terrace and the importance of a crosswalk. What we have planned in the 2022 budget is there will be asphalt resurfacing that's going to be done between, I'm going to say approximately Hoople all the way down to Power Dam Drive. The road is relatively wide, so part of what will be done on 2nd Street West, similar to many of our other streets, there'll be bicycle lanes that will be put in on both sides. We're going to review the parking along the north side of the road. And we're also going to have to take a look at the bus stops. So there's 3 transit stops in that section along 2nd Street on the south side. It's difficult to determine an exact location for a crosswalk with everything the way it currently is, because with all of the driveways turning in and out of whether it's the mall, whether it's Mr. Goddard's properties, the residential properties, plus parking, there has to be clear visibility to put in a crosswalk. So there might be a need to take a look at where our transit stops are. So maybe a transit stop cannot be right in front of Riverdale Terrace, and we might need to assess what the demand or the need is for a transit stop at that location. All of this to say that the project is already in the 2022 budget, but it's going to be a much bigger project than just a crosswalk. It's going to take a look at the whole section of the road. We're looking at parking. We're looking at bike lanes. We'll look at transit stops. We'll look at whether or not there should be potentially a little bit of a bump out in front of Riverdale Terrace to make the distance across the road less than what it currently is. Because right now it's a fairly big road to cross, especially for seniors. So we have it planned already in the 2022 budget for project, and we also committed to Mr. Goddard that we would look at other traffic calming measures, and we're going to plan to update him and engage him in the spring as well when we are closer to finalizing what we think a plan could be.
Yeah, I think, I'm looking at the same map I think you talked about. And it's a real, Councillor Hollingsworth said it's a challenge because I see nothing but driveways and there's only, I'm not an engineer and far from it, but there's only one real spot for that crosswalk that I can see on this map I have. And anyway, so you're telling me, or telling us, that there are plans to have a crosswalk when we're redoing 2nd Street, which would make this motion really not needed.
So we have planned in the 2022 budget, and Mr. Fothrop's here, we have planned to look at the feasibility of putting in a crosswalk, so that is our intention, but we'd want to make sure that it can be done safely, right? So yeah, it'll have to make sure that it meets requirements. Also, I think depending on where the location might be, it's going to have other impacts, either to parking or potentially to a transit stop.
Yeah, I would definitely, what I'm looking at is exactly where the transit stop is. And I walked that area trying to figure out where it could be. And also, on-street parking would have to be eliminated within 150 yards, 100 yards of this area. So there have to be some, Mr. Goddard would have to be, he's the biggest stakeholder in all this, would have to be aware that the parking will be eliminated. And that's, you know, I'm in favor of the crosswalk at this, if it's going to be built here. But there are also some, you know, beyond street parking would have to be eliminated and whatnot. Anyway, I look forward to that. I didn't realize 2nd Street was going to be redone. I've been thinking about why haven't we resurfaced 2nd Street lately, but it was, I think, done about 30 years ago.
Yeah, the solution requires a more comprehensive plan for that whole area.
Okay, I don't see any reason why we would need the report then. If it's going to come into the budget, all we have to do is prove it in the budget. Correct. Okay, thanks.
Councillor Gardner?
I'll be very brief. I'm glad that administration's looking into it. I would have supported this. I think my concerns really are that the existing building is where the recreation is being held, and I see that there will be people crossing Second Street to go to bowling or whatever they have in there. Also, you'll have seniors going across to have lunch, because they have a beautiful dining area there. My biggest concern is the speeding and the traffic, especially the speeding. Something has to be done in that area, and I'll await your report, because they don't slow down. I live in that area, and there are times where I've stood back and watched the cars go through and the motorcycles go through. They don't slow down. So if you've got seniors crossing there, that's an accident waiting to happen. So I'm looking forward to the report from administration.
Councillor Bergeron?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. This item came up at council a month and a half ago or so, or something related to it, and I missed that meeting. I was away in Germany, but I just wanted to state for the record that I fully support this. I really think there should be a crosswalk there. I'm glad it will be in the budget. I'd like to see it at budget time for sure. And so this motion, I don't think prevents that or does anything against that. So I'll support this motion as it is. Thank you.
Anybody else? My own personal view is, do you not think this motion is redundant, or we're going to be discussing it at budget, and we can always bring this back again. It just doesn't make sense to have a report prepared when we're going to be discussing it at budget time. So there is some redundancy in this motion, and we can always, when we're discussing at budget, is actually act on it rather than wait for a report from administration. So I don't know. I don't see the logic of passing a motion here when we're going to have discussions at our budget meetings exactly on this. It just doesn't. It's another report that isn't necessary because we're going to be discussing it very shortly in our budget deliberation. So I'm not going to support it because it just doesn't make sense right now at this time. I think after the explanation from Madame CEO, it's basically we're going to be doing this in our budget deliberations. So having a report to me just doesn't make sense. So anyway, I look for direction from the council. So all in favor of the motion? Opposed? Motion's defeated. Thank you. But I think everything's going to be working out. It's not that this is a defeated motion. It's going to be discussed in its thoroughness. So thank you for that.
Our next news business item is the Brookdale Avenue project reporting, proposed by councillors Justin Towndale and Eric Bergeron. Now therefore be it resolved that administration be requested to report on beginning quarterly reports on the Brookdale Avenue North Sanitary Sewer Extension. And now therefore be it further resolved that administration be requested to report on adopting a formal project management reporting plan for the Brookdale Avenue North Sanitary Sewer Extension project.
So clarify for me, this was a notice of motion?
Sorry, through you, Mr. Mayor, it was a notice of motion because it was directing administration to do the reporting. But as Councillor Towndale indicated, as a new business motion, he's just asking administration for a report on the feasibility of reporting on the project.
Okay, thank you for that clarification. All right, motion was duly moved and seconded. Discussion. Councillor Towndale.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Again, to this, the preamble of the motion kind of explains what I'm getting at. We have a report on the agenda today that stipulates that the end of this project will be next month. if that's the case, so be it. However, it's been going on for some time now, and in September or so, we approved an additional item that was not factored into the original tender. If you may recall, I think it was for an additional engineering study at the cost of $75,000. The report on the agenda, which talks about our capital projects, also indicates another 25 to 30,000 in cost overruns for this project. And if you may recall, a few years ago, when I requested that the municipal works yard project be audited, our auditors created a template which provides a substantial amount of information on each project, including difficulties encountered while the project is ongoing, which has been helpful. We don't normally get reports like that, unfortunately. So my goal here was to see something similar with this project because of the scope of it. When this was first approved a number of years ago, or at least looked at a number of years ago, there's a lot of money tied into this, not just in terms of the project itself, but in terms of potential investment. We had a representative from Irving, for example, come down and talk about a $150 million project, I believe was the number, that would create jobs in the community on their parcel of land at the end, or correction, the beginning of Brookdale in the city. So when you look at things like that, and with the auto dealerships moving up there and future development coming, there's a lot tied into this that isn't necessarily in the ticket price that we're paying. So I believe that, you know, if the project's ending, I'd still like to see something that explains the difficulties that were encountered, just so that we have kind of an understanding of what's going on there. It seems like right now there have been a few hurdles hit. At least that's the impression I get. Thank you.
Discussion? Councillor McIntosh?
Councillor Towndale has mentioned that the project is coming to an end, or 3 or 4 weeks. I'm just looking at, we're asking, the motion is asking for quarterly reports. Project is over in 2 weeks. The quarterly report wouldn't be until the next council meeting, and that report would be on something that's completed. I'm a little fuzzy on that paragraph, asking for quarterly reports. Maybe Justin could.
Councillor Towndale?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Yeah, to Councillor McIntosh's point, I drafted this before I was aware of the end date.
Correct.
I'd be happy to amend it to ask for just the final report once the project's completed, just to kind of sum up the difficulties encountered and the cost overruns. If my seconder would agree to that.
So for clarification, perhaps, Madam Clerk, you could read the motion, so.
Now therefore be it resolved that administration prepare a final report on the Brookdale Avenue North Sanitary Sewer Extension Project. Good.
Just for my clarification, what is the report going to say? I'm having difficulty with that.
Difficulties encountered, cost overruns, explanation for those, anything to that extent. Similar to what we get for the municipal yard project reporting.
So just through you, or do you understand, I imagine through you, Madam CEO, that Bill will be writing that report?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, if I could just maybe speak a little bit to the information that's being requested and the status of the project. So the project has 3 or 4 weeks remaining. The project is substantially within budget. So on the third quarter report, we've indicated that we're potentially committed by a little bit over $100,000. That's 1% within budget. There are still provisional items within this project that might not be required, might not be spent. The project might come in under budget. But also to keep in mind that this project is fully funded through an area-specific development charge. So the project is being funded and paid for by the benefiting property owners along Brookdale Avenue. So a final report is going to have to come forward with information to all of those property owners to show them what those final costs were to finalize the development charges that they're going to be charged. So I think back to your question, Mr. Mayor, like through this project, the reporting for the municipal works yard project it's a multiple year project, potentially 10 years, multiple phases within the project, multiple tenders. This is a fairly straightforward project, although any significant sewer project can have different components that might come up through it. There might be some unanticipated costs, but overall, the project is certainly, from my perspective, within budget. The main construction tender on this project awarded to Louis Bray was for $9.7 million. The project is $10.7 million. So from my perspective, if we wanted to go back through that process to create a report like that we've done for the municipal works yard, I'm going to indicate it's a significant amount of work. The project is virtually completed. We will come back to council with the final report or with final details like we would for the property owners for the DC. But I don't think going back and recreating this report like we did for the municipal works yard is, I think that we would prefer to not have to go through that process. I don't think it's necessary.
So, Councillor DePelon.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Through you to Madam CEO. So when you refer to the property owners, so what amount of, or what percentage is going to be taken on by them?
So the full project is going to be borne by those benefiting property owners. So the $10.7 million. Mrs. Bailey and Mr. Fothrop are here tonight if you wanted to better understand how that allocation occurs, but it's based on, I think, the potential development size of their properties are. In addition to all of this, what also will happen is next spring, we will have the final road resurfacing done. That is going to be done by Connecting Links funding as well. It's a project that qualifies, and we were successful obtaining that funding for. So maybe that answers your question.
Yes, so through you, Mr. Mayor, to Madam CEO, just to be clear then, we're not looking at putting anything on the, if I'm correct from previous meetings or previous approvals, we're not looking at increasing the general tax base for this project.
That would be correct.
Thank you.
Councillor Bennett.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I can appreciate where Justin's coming from, wanting to get information about this project. You know, small towns, rumors start, but I don't think there's any real information that'll come out in a report that you can't get just from having a quick conversation with our administration. Before the meeting, when I saw this was going to come forward, I just had a 5-minute conversation with Mr. DeWitt and got the information I needed as far as how these costs were going. So I just think a report's going to be cumbersome on them for not a. I don't think it's a big enough reason to have a full report come out. I think it's something that information any of us could get from administration with just a quick phone call or just a quick meeting over a coffee. So I don't see the necessity in getting us a full report, but I do understand, you know, he wants to get some information, but I would suggest that he could easily get it just by having a conversation. Thanks.
Anybody else? Councillor McDonald?
And certainly we can get the information by a quick conversation, but we can also just wait till the final report comes out, because I understand all the information is going to be there. So I'm satisfied to wait for that.
Anybody else? Okay, you heard the motion. All in favor of the motion? Opposed? Thank you. Next, Madam Clerk.
Bylaws 2021-126 to 129 inclusive, listed on the agenda, are being presented to council for adoption.
Motion? Councillor McIntosh, Councillor McDonald.
Question, if I may. For bylaw 126, the connecting links, what, the first one?
That's supposed to be separated. Sorry, that's supposed to be separated when we have the motion at the initial for,
So you're telling me I'm too late?
that's exactly.
Okay, thank you. I guess I'll have a quick conversation after.
So was there, all in favor? Opposed? Carried. Thank you.
Now we are at reports from standing, advisory, special, and ad hoc committees of council. Mr. Mayor.
Councillor Gardner.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'll take a couple of minutes. The first thing I want to bring up is, after discussion with Dr. Paul Saturday past, and as the chair of the Eastern Ontario Health Unit, I'd like to clarify an article that was in the Standard Freeholder Saturday, November 20th, on page 3. Quote from the paragraph: "Founder Maurice Gatien told the freeholder he hopes to raise $57,000 for women's shelter locations throughout the Eastern Ontario Health Unit region." Mr. Gatien has never been...
Point of order. I don't think that's appropriate this time. It's a report from standing committees.
From my committee.
But that's, to me, I can't call, I wouldn't allow that. Sorry.
That's fine. I just don't think it was the right thing to do. I think they need to apologize for that to Dr. Paul and the Eastern Ontario Health Unit for putting information out that's not true.
Next. Councillor McDonald.
If I can continue, on Friday, November 19th, I attended a virtual conference, the Association of Local Public Health Units, which all health units in Ontario belong to. I have to say it was a 7.5-hour virtual meeting. I have a lot of notes here that I took from people who spoke, like Christine Elliott and Minister of Education Leachy, who spoke about what was being done to keep the children safe in the schools. There were numerous response and recovery for the COVID once this is not going to be over right away. We heard from Kieran Moore, who's the Chief Medical Officer of Ontario, about unvaccinated. It will cause a spike in December. ICU occupancy right now are stable. I'm not going to go on too much further, but they also discussed workers being threatened by anti-vaxxers. Funding for 2022 will be in place to cover extraordinary costs to the health units. And one thing that really touched me here was that opioid deaths in Ontario in 2020 were 60% increase from 2019. 2,000 opioid deaths in Canada. That's more deaths than in 19. The crisis in Canada is one of the highest in the world. We have one of the highest opioid deaths in the world. That was brought up. And finally, Monica Turner, the AMO representative, spoke of the massive provincial and federal deficits, and that municipalities do not have the capacity to deal with the downloading and reduction of transfer payments. As under the law, we cannot run deficits. There's more, but I've always thought that if I go to a conference or attend a conference virtually, that the council needs to know what we spoke about and how important those committees are. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Well, I want to, before we go on, I want to thank Councillor Gardner for going to that conference. I'm on the board and I couldn't make it because there was another commitment. But I didn't realize it was 7.5 hours long, so that's long to sit in front of a monitor because it's all by Zoom. So it's, so thanks for that, Councillor Gardner.
Worth every minute of it, Mr. Mayor.
Councillor McDonald.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I just want to take this opportunity to give a big shout out to Terry Muir and the Optimist Club. Of course, they were assisted by the other members of the Service Club Council for putting on that spectacular Santa Claus parade. In very short notice, they had almost as many floats as they typically do with more months of preparation. And the feeling in the crowd and the participants, it was an absolutely wonderful event. And a shout out too to Carmel Transit, so I hope, Mr. DeWitt, you'll call that the division, because they put a spectacular bus on the road, very well lit, and of course, it had so many gifts of passes to the ice passes at the Benson Center and swim passes at the Aquatic Center, which of course were very well received. That's thanks to Emma, I think, who put them all together with candy canes on each one of those passes. So it was a really great day. And I just want to say, on related, Kelly Bergeron is doing another holiday sparkle, this time in Lamoureux Park. And I'm wondering if I can ask Mr. Fothrop, are the lights that we're anticipating having access to in the park, will they be in place for the holiday sparkle for this year?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, this is an event that's being put on by Kelly's group, and so they are looking after the light display in and around the circle in Lamoureux Park themselves, with the help of
But I meant, we have a
private
contract
support.
now for somebody to actually
Oh, the light project, that light project has been awarded, and we likely won't see any construction activity get started until well after the Holiday Sparkle event is over.
Okay. I was afraid of
unfortunately.
that, but I'm sure it'll still be spectacular. Okay, thank you very much.
Welcome. I just want to mention Todd Bennett was on the Handy Out Candy as well.
Yes.
We were I want to thank Emma as well. She did a wonderful job organizing it for the city portion of it. And I know there's a lot of walking involved, but to see the look on the children's faces was priceless, especially when you told them they were getting a free swim. It didn't seem to be the season, but they were happy for it. Anyway, thank you. Next, Madam Clerk.
Next is the confirming bylaw. We're looking for adoption of that bylaw.
Councillor DePel, Councillor McDonald, all in favor? Opposed? Carried. Thank you. Motion to adjourn. Councillor McDonald, Councillor Bergeron, all in favor? Opposed? Carried. Thank you. See you in 2 weeks. No next week. So.